right, guys, welcome back. I hope you had an amazing weekend. I sure did. I found a precious combination of family time and magic time. More on that later. Before we get into the show, I just want to quickly shout out and address some of the reactions to my European Legacy Masters qualifier. So, for those who aren't aware, the ELM is a passionate for the players, by the players project, which is hosting paper qualifiers in order to qualify for a paper finals event this August in Belgium. And I was lucky to get granted permission to host an online qualifier, the first of its kind. So I thought that was just totally awesome. Everybody wins. You get more chances to qualify for the event, etc., etc. But I actually received some pushback for hiding it behind a subscription-based paywall, which is, shouldn't be a problem. You sign up, you cancel right away. You see it as a one-way ticket, basically. That's how I presented it anyway. But it turned out to be a bigger problem than I initially thought, which is totally fine. So I adjusted a bit. I've now made this one post basically the ticket for your tournament. So if you go to my MetaFi, you can buy this entry fee as a standalone entry fee, $10. You're in the event. The Discord invite gets you to my server. Then you can join the channel and you can play in the event. So yeah, more options for everybody, and everybody should win. So certainly get over there, and we will get the tournament running hopefully this week. Aside from the ELM slot for the top one finisher, I also put 60 treasure chests into the prize pool, so should be an awesome tournament no matter how you want to join. But yeah, $10 entry fee, or free if you're already a member. So yeah, everybody should win. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this week's legacy results. So first of all, personally, I split the finals of a challenge yesterday. Very, very fortunate to tiebreaker into top 8 at 4-2. And then took care of business from there with my trusty Reanimator deck. My guide is, of course, available on my MetaFi, but you should know that by now. Let's look at this. First column here, the graveyard. Ooh, everybody loves this topic. So let's have a look at this. First, let's check up on Oops All Spells, the deck. I think that is taken up the most, let's call it, time in people's conversations about Legacy, which is kind of funny with it being a super fast deck that doesn't take up a lot of time in the rounds, but it's also not, that scary when it comes to results, in my humble opinion. So Oops All Spells, still a deck you have to respect. If you want to win a tournament, you have to account for Oops All Spells. So it's still here, putting in 3 copies over 5 challenge top 8s, which is obviously super solid. However, the biggest trend this week has been Reanimator. And last week, if everybody, maybe some of you remember, I had an awesome weekend with Final Split and a top 8 with Reanimator. A lot of people picked up that list, changed a few cards, did the same thing. And now, yeah, these versions of Reanimator are not to be messed with. The Tamiyo Bowmaster version with Baraglyphs and Murktide Regents as well, which basically means you don't know if you're playing against this, let's call it 80% tempo deck, or you're playing against this blistering fast combo deck. And the reason why that is powerful is the same cards are not good against those two strategies, right? So your Graveyard Hate is not going to be good against Tamiyo Bowmaster Baraglyph Curve, or, and your Fatal Pushes aren't going to be good against turn 2 Atraxa. So this is partially why the deck is awesome. And I remember comparing it to Breakfast in the past, where it's like Entomb Reanimate is like your Nomad and Cephalid. So not only are those cards way better individually, the black cards, because Reanimate is actually just a solid card in a Force of Will Daze Thoughtseize world. But the thing is, creature removal is always going to be live against Breakfast, right? But it's not the case against Reanimator. So that's something that I thought about. I wanted to share why this deck is so powerful, because there's this guessing game about, oh, well, I guess I have these things covered, but I don't have those things covered. I'm soft to turn 1 Tamiyo, or I'm soft to, double Bowmaster, or whatever the case may be. So this reminds me a lot of what I learned in Vintage a few years back. I guess it's many years, doesn't matter. Where it's like, okay, I have a Leyline against Dredge. I hope they don't have a double hollow one. That's just something you have to hope that you're covering enough of your opponent's range, right? When you're sideboarding, when you're keeping your 7 cards, when you're choosing how to mulligan, how to resolve ponder, etc. So this deck puts a lot of pressure on the opponent's ability to hedge correctly, and when they don't, you can pounce. So this deck is awesome. No, not much more needed to say. But I will say, building a good 75, understanding what is the Reanimator deck doing against certain matchups, how do they sideboard, stuff like that is something you should research if you care about beating Reanimator. Then a copy of Fast Reanimator also made it into a top 8. That's always cool to see. The Chain of Smog, with the Bloom Apprentice, sideboard juke, very annoying to play against. Again, is Graveyard Hate relevant? Is removal spells relevant? Both can be irrelevant in any individual game, and that deck can make you pay. This is exactly the formula that we're looking for. All right, now we're off to the days column, and we actually still have a pretty healthy split here, although the Dimir version is heavily favored. Cutter had a great weekend or week. I can't remember which one, but it did end up winning a challenge. That's the foil copies I've tried to incorporate. I don't even know if you can tell which copies are foil. Excuse me. But let me put it this way: when a deck first places a challenge, it's more likely to get copied. When it gets copied, it's more likely to do well in the next challenge. So we will see a lot of these. Cutter wins a challenge. Cutter sees more play. Some Grixis Wizards deck made the finals of a challenge, then it sees more play and top 8's in the hand of another player, right? So it's just, that tendency is just something I wanted to share, that this is something that I build with in mind. And it's especially true the older the format is, because then the player base, on average, has less time to innovate. So I would argue I'm probably one of the players who spent the most time on Legacy every week. And then it's just my job to, first of all, I know I'm going to inspire a lot of people, but I also know that my, let's call it tech, will get more eyeballs on it, get copied more often, and then get into people's, habits. So I can't get away with too much stuff for that long. It's usually a one-time job. And then I hope it's good, and then I move on to greener pastures. Just wanted to share that. The Questing Druid here represents classic, is a Delver Splash green. So this version is not running Cutter. This version still has the same issues with, Delver Secrets being so-and-so. Questing Druid has to get cast off a single trop. That could be, a little bit annoying. But the players who are doing well with this version, those are players that are very dedicated to the archetype. I always notice the names, and that it's just to say that practice and having mastered a deck, that is way more important than if any other tempo variant is slightly better if played by a robot. So huge shout out to those guys sticking to their guns. With that being said, the Cutter here, I think this card is here to stay. Not necessarily because of the Cutter, but mainly because the red splash is going to be relevant into a lot of metagames moving forward. And then when you're already in red, you're going to be playing the best 2-drop, the most resilient to removal 2-drop, right? So, chicken and the egg thing. Dimir, not much to say here. Very well-rounded deck. So this is my recommendation. If you think you can make every small decision correct at a table of Magic, you should play Dimir, and then you should tweak your deck for the metagame. Awesome deck, and especially this card, Kaito. I think people are getting better playing with Kaito, but then, of course, people are also getting better playing against Kaito. So there's a little bit of kind of invisible power struggle going on there, where you're unlikely to catch your opponent off guard the more time that passes, but you also get better at finding spots to bluff Kaito, which ability to use and stuff like that. Next column here is combo, and we have a comeback situation here from Mystic Forge. So as you can see here, one foil copy. Some people followed suit, and this deck actually beat me yesterday. I had no chance against that deck, and I was happy that my opponent accepted the split in the finals. This deck is awesome. I think it's very good, but it's also a deck you can handle. So again, if Mystic Forge, if you're the only guy in the world playing Mystic Forge, you're loving life. If people start, playing it a lot and it becomes like a, 7% deck, not so much, because then all the other decks will adapt. Sneak Attack, pretty awesome. It's now a niche deck. Ran stock up, got printed. It was all over the shop, between Omni and Sneak. The strategy is fine. It's especially good at beating up on decks like, lands and creature decks. but you're going to be having a tougher time if you're getting Thought Seized and Pyroblasted and Wastelanded every turn. So, yeah, niche, of course, playable combo deck. Doomsday, kind of the same thing. Doomsday also has the guessing game going for it. Will my opponent have, you know, Tamios and Bowmasters and Murktides? Or will my opponent be a Personal Tutor, Cabal Ritual, Let's Go Fast version? That's usually how I tell the difference. Always cool to see that deck doing well. Then we have Necro Dominance here, and this was not like a classic, you know, win on your end step type of thing. This was a pitch black version, which is very cool to see. So obviously that is powerful, but that it actually gets the job done and ends up winning a challenge is amazing. So huge inspiration to brewers out there. Then we have a copy of Mono Blue Painter that I could have put somewhere else. This is kind of a pseudo, I mean, sure, you can finish the game off with a combo, but sometimes you also bury your opponent in resources, Tameo, Emery, Thoughtcast, stock up, or you simply just win with Ursa Saga. This deck is still good, and I feel like it's a bit underplayed. I will certainly be returning to this deck at some point, but I don't think it's going to be now when Mystic Forge is trending. That means you're going to be facing more hate cards that are going to affect you. And it's kind of the same thing for me with this Paradoxical Outcome deck. It looks fun and all, but if I'm sharing the space with other, you know, blue or artifact decks in the combo realm, yeah, I'm just not I'm not too much into that. I want to find my niche when I'm playing that deck. I don't want to, you know, get hit by a lot of splash damage. Next up here is another big comeback story. We have lands. So 4 copies of lands. That is huge. That's 10% of all top 8s this past week in Legacy are taken up by lands. And lands is very hard to play against, so I suggest you study it. You contact your local lands player. You reach out to the good lands players online and try and kind of get their tips on how to beat their own deck. This is just something that I can't recommend enough. Reaching out, trying to get, you know, more knowledgeable about the game, especially when you play locally. It's like, oh, how did you sideboard? How do you view this? How do you view that? And then you exchange some information and you both come out wiser than you came in. I care a lot about learning when I play. I don't care too much about, you know, who wins the game or who wins the match or if my play worked. I care a lot more about the reasons I had to go for a certain play or the reasons my opponent had. And then I care about good decisions. I don't care about outcomes, if that makes sense. So the cool thing is good decisions lead to good outcomes, you know, in the long run. And that's a lot of what I base my coaching on as well. So it's mainly a mindset thing where you care about the play rather than the outcome of the play. But that's just talk for another day. Here is the control column. So fuck Beanstalk. It's now a niche deck. It was all over the shop when, what was that card? Rakshas's Bargain got printed. We've talked about that before. Fan favorite deck, just not a tier 1 legacy deck necessarily. You really have to nail the right list for the metagame. You have to play super tight. You have to, yeah, dodge a lot of problems basically. So love that deck, but I don't expect it to become a big player of the metagame. So speaking about that, Grixis Ninjas, or Grixis Wizards, pretty cool deck to see. Incredibly fun to play. Legacy players love to play, you know, the slower blue decks. And the deck had an awesome week, so hats off to those pilots for sure. I think the deck is exploitable in quite many ways, but it looks super fun to play, and I want to play Flame of Anor sometime in the future, no doubt about that. Then we have this cool Spellseeker 80-card Yorion deck. I remember it actually won a showcase at some point where you're like ephemerating and zenithing and you have this toolbox, and that's just the ultimate value deck. If you ever cared about, like, let's say, Esper Vial, Death and Taxes, those type of decks, this is what you want to be doing, and you can keep tweaking. And because you have access to your deck so often with Spellseeker, with Zenith and stuff like that, any one of tweak you make is going to have impact on the game. So this is for sure the most fun deck getting played this past week. Like, no contest here. Last column here is creatures. So hats off to the Japanese player Yoshiwada for winning a challenge with his favorite deck. 80-card Death and Taxes. We've talked about this before. This deck is especially awesome if all you have to play against is going to be Tempo and Graveyard. And then if people play a lot of Blood Moons, you're also going to be doing just fine with your ton of basic lands and Ethervial. Blood Moon is not really a card these days, unfortunately. So yeah, this deck is awesome, and it's oftentimes going to be bad against, you know, decks going ham like Sneak and Forge and Doomsday and stuff like that. Then we have a single copy of Maverick, and it was actually in the hands of a player that I remember playing a lot against in the past on this deck. Always hard to play against. I remember the Knight of the Reliquary package being, especially when I played in paper, you had to research, but back then I didn't really treat it as a sport, so it's more like if I remembered on the day what I played against last Tuesday and stuff like that, right? So it's kind of the oops all spells. You need to like research a lot to know how to play with your Graveyard Hate. What was the other deck I talked about when it came to research? Yeah, lands, Cradle Control is another one. Basically where they have these tutors and one-offs that will impact the game heavily. That's where you want to be doing your research. So, all in all, pretty diverse metagame here. I think I like my categories. I think they work for now. Also notice 0 copies of Nadu. Is that even true? Yeah. 0 copies of Nadu here, so not much of a boogeyman going on there. People still think Oops All Spells is a boogeyman, and now I can see the Reanimator train coming for sure. But that's good. That's good. I will tackle that as we get there. So that's basically just me looking into the crystal ball. Speaking about looking into the crystal ball, I've decided to expand my Metagame Monday, but I've decided to make it a members-only thing, so I will have my solutions, more in-depth analysis of the current metagame, what we can do to win more games in the week to come. But yeah, as I said, that's going to be a member-only segment, so my 120-something members are going to be happy about that, and for you guys, totally voluntarily. If you join, I'm going to be stoked. If you don't join, totally fair. I'll keep making these and be very, very happy about doing so. I think that's going to do it for today. No, sorry, I actually had one more. I also launched an article series over on my Metafy here. I'll be writing every week. The column is called Win More, and that is a promise, by the way. If you don't win more, I'll happily return your money. So the first one is about how tempo has evolved and how tempo and card advantage are, treated this year, basically, compared to historically, where it's been totally different, and what demands and how do you win games, and, the critical turn and all sorts of inspirational stuff that's going to hopefully make you a better player, have more fun, and win more games. So I think that's going to be it for today. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I love making these, and hopefully you love to watch them. I hope to see you back soon on the channel. Bye, guys.